basically your intention, desires, and what we call basically attachment and aversion. Something you like, you get attached. Something you hate, you just start hating. So, according to my faith, one should avoid attachment and aversion.
I'd like to welcome to the show Subhash Jain. How you doing, Subhash?
Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm very good, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to talk to you about your book, The Path to Inner Peace, Mastering Karma. And karma is a very interesting word. We talk about it. It's almost in the lexicon. It's in the zeitgeist. People talk about karma, instant karma, all of these kind of things as like, oh, that he was mean to somebody, and then all of a sudden a truck hits him. I'm like, that's instant karma. I'm like, I'm not sure if that's instant karma.
Yes, exactly.
But, so my first question to you before we jump into karma is how did you start your spiritual journey?
You see, I came to this country a long time back in 1967. You can see it's about 55 years ago.
Okay.
And of course, at that time I was fairly young, and I'm coming from a country where everybody knows the word karma.
Sure.
And I landed in 67 where practically nobody here at that time knew this word karma. Very few people knew this karma.
Mm-hmm.
So landing from a country where everybody knows karma to a country where practically very few people started knowing about karma at that time. I'm talking about 55 years ago. Yeah, but anyway, so I start working here. Then they start asking me question because I came from a faith which originated in India. You see, my last name Jain belongs to a faith called Jainism.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably know there are four faiths. They originated in India.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are familiar with Hinduism, and then they start knowing about Buddhism because they're now talking about yoga and meditation and things like that. So they, in the last, I would say, 30 years, they knew about Buddhism. But there is a third faith, Jainism, and which is as old as the other two faiths, Hinduism and Buddhism, is fairly very ancient faith. And the fourth faith is Sikhism, which is fairly recent one, which originated about 600 years ago, is fairly recent one. But all the four faiths, they of course believe in this what we call karma doctrine. And so people knew that I'm coming from a country where everybody talks about karma. So they start talking me about this word karma, but then I found out I really didn't know much about karma. Though I born in a faith where I should know about karma, because my faith is just practically based on karma doctrine. So then I start reading about it. And more I read, more I had more questions actually. I really didn't answer many lot of questions. And then I really became interested in this karma doctrine. I knew that there's a lot of things which I really didn't understand. And then I start contemplating and thinking about it. And one thing, common mistake, everybody thinks they try to relate every event, every occurring in the world by karma. It is not correct. Everything is not controlled by karma doctrine. So it's very important people should know that they shouldn't really think that everything what we do, whatever action we are doing, everything is controlled by karma, which is not correct. So that was my main thing when I started. I wanted to know what kind of action, what are the events which are controlled by karma, which are the things which are not controlled by karma. And so that was the most important thing I did in my book also.
So if we go back for a second, that your faith is Jainism, which I'm familiar with to a certain extent. I've heard about it. I've heard that it's older or just about as old as Hinduism, because I mean, Hinduism goes back 6,000 years, arguably older, depending on the Vedas and how you interpret it.
Yeah, but I think again, if you ask any Jain, he will say no, Jainism is older than Vedas. But anyway, it's a controversy and nobody can resolve this controversy.
Right.
But it is very old, and that's good enough. I think, yeah, it's fairly old religion.
It's a fairly old religion. Can you, because I don't know much about it, can you kind of give me the broad strokes on the beliefs of Jainism?
I think the main difference between, because people know about Hinduism, so I would say Buddha, which was the founder of Buddhism, and our last founder, we call it Mahavira, they were contemporary. Mahavira and Buddha, they were contemporary. Actually, they saw each other, they met each other, and they had a discourse either. So I would say it's definitely 2,600 years old religion, because Buddha time, everybody agrees that Buddha was there about 2,600 years ago. So the main difference is that both Buddhism and Jainism, they don't believe in a creator. That's the main difference. I think most faiths believes in some kind of a creator. But these are the only two faiths in the world. They don't believe in a creator. They think this universe was there all the time and it will be there. So you really don't need a creator to create anything.
So in other words, yes, well, it's the concept of God has always been. It was never before God. There's never an after God. It's just always been, which is a very difficult concept for people in the materialism world to understand, because here everything is created.
Yes.
Everything has an end at one point or another.
Right, exactly.
So, okay. So that's the main doctrine, if you will, of Jainism and Buddhism.
Yeah. Both. Yeah. They don't believe in God.
They believe that there's something that has always been, which is our universe.
Yeah.
And that we are in it. And then there's this cycle of birth and death of us here. But you do also believe in a soul, eternal energy of some sort, correct?
Yeah, definitely. You see, yeah, if you believe, Jainism thinks that this cosmos or this universe is composed of six, what we call, there is a word called Davya, which substances. There are six substances which compose this world. Mm-hmm. And everybody understands matter. The matter is definitely one of the substances which is there. And not scientists, but most faith believe in soul. So there is another substance which we call soul. So there is another substance in this universe which is soul. But then there are four other substances. And again, scientists believe two other substances we call space and time. So Jainism thinks, yeah, there are two other substances, space and time. They're also part of this universe. So the universe cannot exist without space and time. So we call these as kind of a substance which exists in this world. Mm-hmm. But beside these four, there are two other substances which are really little, nobody understand. And we call medium of motion and medium of rest. We think that anything to move, you need some other thing which helps moving things. So we call, there is another substance which scientists sometimes start calling ether. Because they think, they thought light to move, you need some kind of a medium. Light cannot travel without a medium, that kind of a wave. So they thought, for all these waves, you need a medium, and they start talking about a substance called ether. But they had this problem, and Einstein had problem with this ether. And sometimes they say, oh yeah, there is a ether. And sometimes they say, no, we can explain this universe without ether. So it's still scientists are not really sure about this concept. But anyway, in Jainism, we think you definitely need a medium which helps other substances to move, to matter or soul to move in this universe. And we call this substance medium of motion. And similarly, you need another substance we call medium of rest. All these planets are revolving. There is some kind of an equilibrium, steadiness. And you need a substance so that everything is in equilibrium, and we call the medium of rest. So these are the six substances which, this is the unique concept in Jainism. They talk about all these different substances in the universe, and they think there are six substances in the universe, and definitely soul and matter are the two most important substances. Yeah.
That's really fascinating. I've never heard those concepts before. I understand them,
Yeah.
but I understand the concepts behind it, but I've never heard those before. Let me ask you, because you mentioned Einstein and you mentioned scientists. It's really interesting now that that so many of the concepts that have been around with Jainism and Hinduism and in the Vedas, these basic concepts have been around for thousands of years, and scientists and science are starting to catch up to those ideas. So what are your feelings on how science, quantum physics, and things like that are starting to really intertwine with concepts of faith, religion, spirituality?
Yeah, you see, that's what I think. There is one group in India right now, and I belong to that group. We are trying to combine these two ideas because there is still a wide gap what the way scientists think and the way Jainism think about the universe. And the idea is from two opposite direction. The scientists, when they talk about matter, they start with a solid liquid gases, and they go to smaller and smaller particle, and they start breaking these atoms and molecules into atoms and quarks and the smaller and smaller particles. So this is the direction they are going. They started with big molecules and then start breaking those molecules into smaller particles, and they are now talking about quarks and different type of particles, small particles. But Jainism started in the opposite way. They started with the smallest particle, and which they call like an atom, not exactly atom, the smallest, which cannot be divided further, the smallest ultimate particle, we call it. So we start with ultimate particle, and these ultimate particles start joining in each other. They become plasma and then other things and liquid gases and solids, liquids and solids and things like. So we started from fine particles and start making big particles, and somehow we want to converge the way the scientists are thinking and the way the Jains are thinking. There's still wide gap, and we are trying to make this gap as narrow as possible. But yeah, you are right. I think there are a lot of similarities in our thinking, but it is still a very wide gap.
Well, yeah, and there's no question there's still a wide gap, but the concepts of quantum physics with even something as simple as, not simple, but something as popular as maybe simulation theory and Maya, or the illusion, those two concepts are just being explained in completely different ways, but they're the same concept, which before 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that wasn't a conversation.
Right, exactly. You are right. Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you, for people who don't understand, if someone's coming to this conversation for the first time, can you give a basic understanding of what the word karma means?
You see, basically, I think in Jainism is a slightly different concept. This word karma, basically, they think action is the word. Equivalent word in English will be action.
Mhm.
So we do karma all the time. So because we do action all the time. For example, I am doing action of speaking, and you are doing the action of listening, or vice versa. So we are doing this action or this karma. So I'm doing of karma of speaking and listening. But again, the concept is that every action has consequences, and the basic, I think in all faith, four faiths which originated in India, they believe in this concept that everybody has to bear the consequences of their action.
Mhm.
And this is also what basically this karma doctrine is. And the main problem is that all consequences are not governed by karma doctrine. That's the main problem. And so there are certain consequences which are controlled by karma doctrine and which you have to bear in your future life, those consequences. And so where this information is stored, that what consequences you will bear in your future life, in Jainism, they are stored in some kind of a very, very fine matter, and that fine matter we also call karmic particles.
Hmm.
So that's the main difference between among these four faiths. Jainism is the only faith where they think all these karmic consequences they are stored in a very very fine particle which is called karmic particles.
And where does that live? In the soul?
Yeah, those are remained is you see because the particle when I use the word particle is definitely matter is not soul.
Mhm.
But yeah, and so I'm made of two things. I am made of matter, which is my body, and of course I have soul, which my consciousness is part of that soul. So I am made of two things, soul and matter. And so there is a karmic body inside my body. So I have this what I call body, which is my you can see my body. But there is another, there is a very, very fine body, and that's the main thing. Those fine particles are so fine nobody can see, even you cannot see under the microscope. This is like a very similar to your genetic body, but genetic body is still coarse. You can see genes or DNA molecules by under electronic microscope. But the problem is this karmic body is even more finer, more subtler than the genetic body. And so, and we think, at least we start talking about it, because scientists think 96% matter of the universe is still not visible. They call dark matter and dark energy. So scientists think that they don't have really equipment or instruments to see this dark matter and dark energy. When they compute the mass of all these known galaxies, they can see only 4% visible mass of the universe. Based on their standard model of universe,
Right.
they find that they can see only 4%. And 96% remaining mass is they call dark matter and dark energy. So we think this dark matter, dark energy is part of this what we call karmic matter. And so, which is a very, very, so this is the concept we have in Jainism. Yeah.
It's really interesting because everything you're saying, within the spirituality aspects of it is all connected into the scientific parts of it, at least in the way you explain it, which is very unique in my experience studying spirituality and speaking to people on my show. Most people don't connect those two. I mean, quantum physicists I've had on the show do, who are a little farther along, but I've never had someone from the spiritual side really explain things on the scientific side, even though it's scientific things that we can't, like you said, observe, but the concepts are there. So it's really, really interesting. So as far as karma is concerned, okay, you said that not every action has an equal and opposite reaction in the sense of karma.
Right.
So what constitutes karma? Obviously, if I kill somebody, I'd imagine that is a karmic load that I will have to take with me. I'm assuming.
Yeah. That's what I prefer to use instead of karmic load. I use the word karmic debt.
So it's a debt that I'm going to have to pay.
Yeah. People use both terms, karmic load or karmic debt. Yeah.
But if I cheat on my test in high school, I might. If I cheat on my test in high school, I that's not the same as far like do I have a karmic debt there or not?
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so what doesn't constitute a karmic debt? That's a better question then.
Okay, yeah, you see, I think we have to understand that there are two types of consequences. And one of the consequences, and that's the, I think, major mistake everybody makes. For example, when I go, for example, I used to work, I used to teach, and teaching was my action. And as a consequence of that teaching, I used to get some reward, which was my salary. So my income was basically the consequence of my teaching. And definitely, there is no doubt, because I was doing the action of teaching, it has consequences. And that consequence of teaching has consequence of this reward or salary, what I was getting. So that type of consequence is not governed by karma doctrine. That's the main problem today, because this is definitely a consequence of my action of teaching. But that consequence is not governed by karma doctrine. That's the mistake people make. If somebody is rich and they think, and that whatever wealth they are getting, this is due to their karma. Everybody think, and that's the common mistake. Everybody wants to relate all their wealth and by karma. And according to me, my thinking is that the wealth is not controlled by karma doctrine. It's by man-made laws, because I can explain this, because before Russia became in 92, I think, when the Soviet Union
became Russia. Sure, they fell.
Yeah. Before that, everybody was controlled. I have more or less the income disparity was very small. So you can control income disparity by just making laws. This is man-made laws, and you can want that everybody should have same income. You can do that. There are a lot of Scandinavian countries where income disparity is not very large, and there are capitalistic countries. So depending upon what kind of man-made laws you follow, you can govern the income disparity or what kind of income you will have. So income is not governed by karma doctrine.
So in other words, if I did really good in one life, I become a billionaire in the second life. That's not the way that works.
Yeah, right.
But if I misuse the money that I have here by hurting people or taking advantage of people, that becomes a karmic debt.
Yeah, you see, that's what basically, so we'll have to, first of all, I think we have to define this word action. Action includes two things. Most things, action talks about only physical action. Of course, I do action with my body, with my speech, and with my mind. So I do physical action with this body, speech, and mind, which we call my body and speech action. But this is only physical action. But then it is psychic action. You see, when I do action, there is some intention, there's a driving force with some desire, some attachment, why I'm doing these things. So that psychic action is most important thing. So this action has two components, which is physical component and then the psychic component, and which in my book use the word moha, M-O-H-A. And which is basically includes all your intention, desire. So that includes both. So moha is very important. So if you do any action with moha, that you will have definitely consequences. So I divide consequences into two parts. One consequences which does not change with time and place.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some consequences which change with time and place. So for example, when I came to this country, I used to teach in India, and I used to used to teach the same subject there. I used to get some salary there. Came back to US in 67, start teaching the same thing here. But my salary was very, very, very different. So though I was doing the same job, some kind of action.
Sure.
So this kind of a consequences varied with time and place. My salary changed also with time. Later on my salary increased. I was still teaching the same thing, but my salary was different. So my salary was changing with time also, not only with time and place. So there are a lot of consequences which change with time and place. So those are not universal consequences. Those are consequences which change with time and place, and they are not governed by karma doctrine, because karma doctrine is a universal doctrine. Only universal consequences are governed by karma doctrine.
So if I actively have an intention to hurt you, that's governed by karma doctrine.
Right. And the main problem is that those consequences are not visible. These universal consequences, you store that information somewhere that you did this. Yeah.
All right. So then, all right, let me get to this.
Yeah.
So let's say I have some karma I have to deal with. And you're not going to see it.
Yeah.
Maybe as you become older, or you maybe become a little bit more aware of stuff, you're like, okay, that's something I did before that. That's the reason why I got that. but the universe will find a place and time for you to pay that debt off in this life.
Yes.
Whether that be if you hurt somebody intentionally in another life, in this life, someone even might be the same person in a different body, maybe, or just or a different person will make you feel the same way you made someone else feel, or those consequences. Is that accurate?
No, I think you see the consequences you have stored, they will bear fruit in future time. Then they will produce the fruit, and then of course, if you did bad action, then you will definitely have some bad consequences.
But it doesn't have to be the same consequence.
No,
I mean, in other words,
no.
it could be something else.
No, it's something else. But it will be definitely bad. Not exactly that you hit somebody, you slap somebody, you will get slapped. No, you will feel pain, but it can be a different kind of pain.
So the money of karma is pain and pleasure, I guess, or pain and happiness, or things along those lines.
Yeah, I think you can say it's actually
that would be the monetary system, if you will, of karma.
Definitely one way, definitely. But this karma controls other things also. For example, we know that certain people are more intelligent than the others.
Coming into a life.
Right. And we think this also governed by karma. There is one type of karma which controls the intelligence. Intelligence,
physical attributes, artistic talents.
Right.
Where you're born, who you're born to, all these things are dealt with karma. So let me ask you a question. I've talked to multiple spiritual masters on the show, near-death experiencers.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding of the way karma is dealt with on the other side, and again, this is just from what I've spoken to, is that the soul, it is a karmic debt, but the soul's choice is to come back and deal with that debt. It is not like a doctrine that means you have to go back to earth to pay this debt off. It's more like, if you are going to continue down this path, you will have to repay this debt. And from what I understand, it is the soul's choice to go, oh, I really need to go back down there because I slapped Sahash in the face, and I feel really bad at what I did to him. And if I'm just going to keep growing spiritually and evolving, I need to go back. And it's almost like I'm just going to go back because I got to do the work, as opposed to someone's up there with a judge and a gavel and a judge that says, no, you must go back.
Yeah, you see, as I said in the beginning, because we don't believe in a supreme power, there is no God in our. So this karma doctrine is self-regulating doctrine.
Correct.
So this karmic body, the way we have this karmic body, everything is self-regulating. So that's the main difference. In all other two faiths, which is Hinduism and Sikhism, where they believe there is an administrator, God take care of all those things, then things become easy, because then you can leave everything to the God, and he will take care about the reward and punishment. But if you don't believe in God, then you will have to devise a system in which you will have to explain how this system works, how your karmic body will take care.
So my question to you is, who developed the system?
Oh, it's a self-regulated system. There was no development. The system was there all the time. As long as the universe was, there is no beginning and end of this universe. So we were there all the time, and so everything was there all the time. So there was no beginning.
It's hard to understand. It's hard to understand those concepts here on Earth. It's just it's a difficult concept.
That's the basic assumption. The very first presumption in Jainism is there is no beginning, no end, no creator. This universe was there, and it will remain there.
Exactly. Okay, so I understand where you're coming from. So, all right. So let's say that you have karmic debt on your body.
Right.
Is there anything you can do consciously to repair it? Meaning doing good deeds, helping other people. Is there something physically you can do without it being done to you, if you will?
Yeah. You see, again, one has to understand this word moha. Moha
intention.
Everything. And moha is basically your intention, desires. and what we call basically attachment and aversion. Something you like, you get attached. Something you hate, you just start hating. So, according to my faith, one should avoid attachment and aversion. One should be neutral. What should anything happens, you should be just just watch. It should not affect you. So this moha should not be there. As long you have attachment and aversion, you will keep collecting karmic debt. And as your moha keep decreasing, your karmic debt start decreasing. So the idea is basically you start with certain attachment and aversion, and somehow you start controlling your attachment and aversion with time, and say, okay, I love that thing so much, or I hate that so much. Don't love, don't hate so much, and keep reducing your attachment and aversion. And eventually you will become completely what we call equanimity. You have everything, you don't hate anybody and you don't love anybody. You're just neutral. Completely nothing affects you. And so that moha becomes zero, and once your moha becomes zero, then your karmic debt will become zero. So the mantra is basically try to reduce your moha. And the best way to reduce your moha is control your desires. And the other best way I can explain, try to live with less. Mm-hmm. You see, the more, if you can really live, you have no desire. You can just, you can sit down and close your eyes and think yourself that you have no desire. Then you have nothing to worry about. You will be entirely, completely in peace. You have this problem because you desire something, and if you don't get that, meet your desire, you have problem. Yeah. So if you don't have any desire, then there is no problem. So the desire is the main problem, and desire really creates this attachment and aversion. So the mantra is basically try to live with less. And as you keep reducing the requirement, and I think right now, the way our universe is, we are behaving, and all this climate problem we have, and all these things will go away if everybody starts consuming less rather than wanting more. You can just see how the things will change. So the basic mantra is try to live with less. If you just do that, and then you will go in the right direction, and eventually you keep reducing your requirement, and then eventually a day will come and you won't need anything, and you won't have no more and no karmic debt, and you will become, your soul become without karmic debt, and that soul we call pure soul. Right now, my soul is impure because it carries a lot of this karmic debt, and the idea is that we want to get rid of. So you see, the kind of happiness I'm talking about, what is we call transient happiness. We get happiness, and that lasts for such a short period. Right. But if you can think of yourself without desire, no desire at all, that kind of happiness you will have will not never will go away.
I could tell you from experience.
Yeah.
That, when you want to buy and consume and buy and consume, and you're like, oh, I want to buy a new TV, or I want to buy a new car, or I want to buy this or that. Yeah. You're happy for a little bit, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
But being debt free, mm-hmm. with no credit card debt,
yeah,
is a feeling of happiness that you can't comprehend, right, unless you feel that. There's a sense of freedom with that. Because for most of my life, I was always dealing with debt and understanding how money worked, and I was an idiot. I just didn't know until I got educated, and I had a good woman in my life to help me that was able to get that. But that freedom is so powerful, and it's something that I think we should all thrive to be, is to find that freedom within ourselves. So if you can be happy with yourself without anything external around you, then you're always happy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
But if this thing that I'm holding is the source of my happiness, then if this thing goes away, you have a problem.
Right. So that's, you see, I also have the same thing, but I just use this only probably half an hour per day. And I know people use 24 hours per day. So
You're talking about the phone, by the way. You're talking about the phone.
I don't hate it. I still use it. I have, but I know that I can. My cell phone is not controlling me. I am controlling my cell phone. The difference is most people cell phone is controlling them. And we have to learn that we have to control cell phone rather than cell phone. So we are going in the wrong direction. I think it's okay. I'm not against using cell phone, but don't give your everything to cell phone and you become slave of the cell phone.
It's a tool.
That's the,
It's an absolute tool as opposed to letting it control you. You need to control it, without question. So you were saying earlier that if you release all your karma, you become a pure soul.
Yeah.
Is that what Buddha, Jesus?
Yes.
That's what they became?
Yeah, that's what they whatever I think nirvana they call it or moksha they call it.
Nirvana,
So,
right?
yeah, you see, once you go, then you are not come back as in reincarnation, not reborn.
There's no need.
No need. So that's what you want to do. If you don't want to come back into the cycle of happiness and misery, because once you are in this world, misery will be there all the time. There is no way. You will be happy sometimes, but most of the time you will be unhappy. So that's the main problem. So if you want happy all the time, infinite happiness, then definitely you want to become what we call pure soul. Pure soul has no problem at all. And the idea is basically to get rid of this karma and convert my impure soul to become a pure soul.
And then because karma and nirvana, or karma and enlightenment, are those exclusively separate, or do they coincide at the same time? Meaning that if you lose all your karma, you will become enlightened. Exactly.
Right.
So both of those things come together. You cannot become enlightened and still have karmic debt.
Right. Exactly.
According to the Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So then the Buddhas and the Jesuses and the quote unquote ascended masters, essentially.
Right.
As you see behind me, I have Yogananda, I have
I can see all of them. Yes.
Yukteswar, Babaji, all of these ascended masters that I have around me. So, okay, because that was something that people to understand. So there's something that you mentioned in your book called the karmic field. What is the karmic field?
Karmic field is basically when you are doing new action, you have your consequences of old actions, which are stored in your karmic body. So your new action can affect your past consequences through your karmic field.
Okay, explain that again.
It's important. I think by doing suppose you have done a lot of bad actions in the past and you have very bad consequences stored in your karmic body. But you need not to worry about. You can really convert those bad actions or consequences into good consequences by doing good deeds in the future, because this karmic field is an interactive field. The new action affect the past consequences of past action. So by doing good action in the future, you can really convert the bad actions of past action, bad consequences of past action through this karmic field I'm talking about. So people think, oh, you already have done so many bad things and there is no hope, which is not correct. You can definitely, once you realize that, you want to go a different path, you can start working right now. You can change your path and start doing good deeds and start reducing your, what I call again this moh. Start reducing your attachment and aversion, so your moh start decreasing, and you start doing new actions with less moh. Then you will find your past consequences will also change.
Well, let me ask you this: there's a lot of people, because a lot of people, especially in the Western religions, say that being rich or being wealthy is
Mhm.
bad. And it's obviously it's hurtful and harmful and you screwed people over and all this kind of stuff. But there are a lot of people who are extremely wealthy who do an amazing amount of things for the world, that do good has good intentions with their money, and or either inherited their money and started to give it away. The one person that comes to mind is the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos,
Mhm.
the Amazon founder, who I think
Mhm.
she has 40 billion,
Yeah. Anyway, the
and
numbers.
she's giving it away, and she's
Uh-huh.
giving it away and helping people. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of people think that in order to be perfect, that you need to be without clothes, in the street, in a cave somewhere, that have no physical things in the world at all to do this kind of work. Is that fair?
No, no, no. First of all, as I said in the beginning, money has nothing to do with karma doctrine.
Okay.
These consequences, which I call visible consequences, are not governed by karma doctrine.
No.
Whether it has nothing to do whether you are doing a good deed or bad deed. These consequences nothing to do. Even a bad person can earn money.
Sure. No. I understand that.
So the
But
money part is, but yeah, even a person who doesn't have money, he can do good deeds.
but my point is, a person who has a lot of money can do good deeds as well.
So he can have both things. Don't do anything. No, doesn't help anybody. Yeah. But if he helping anybody, he can do definitely good deeds. Yeah. So
Right. And then someone who has the resources of, let's say, Mrs. Jeff Bezos could do an immense amount of good deeds with that money, and really do good for the world. So, because there is a demonization of money and wealth in the world, and they're like, oh, but you can't have good karma, or you can't be spiritually enlightened if you have too much money, or that's not the case from my understanding.
no, yeah. You see again this word attachment. If you have definitely lot of you don't want to give away when you have attachment. Whatever you have, you don't want to give to anybody. You have
A problem.
Yeah, but yeah, you don't get attached to money. Start giving up, then you don't have attachment, and
No.
definitely that's less moha, and less moha is better. Definitely, those who are not giving their money and they just don't want to support anybody, they have more.
So the key is attachment. So I could have $1 billion, or I could have $1.
Right.
And the person who has $1 could be more attached to that dollar than the person who has the $1 billion.
Exactly. Moha is the most, yeah, right.
Okay, perfect. Now, I was introduced recently to a concept in karma called generational karma that is passed along through, from what I understand, through DNA, through the genetic code. I don't know what it is, but where it's generational. So like if my grandfather or great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather, let's say I had an ancestor who fell off of a Mayan, was sacrificed on a Mayan pyramid and fell to their death, beheaded. I, in this life, would be afraid of heights because I'm still dealing with what that is. It's a crude example.
Yeah.
What is your feeling on generational karma?
No, you see, I think, yeah, I really can't say, but I know Hinduism that they have definitely kind of generational karma, and they have what they call community karma or common karma. But in Jainism, we don't have. This is karma is very individualistic. My karma, nobody can really have. My karma cannot affect anybody. I have to bear my own karma. So
Okay.
we don't share karma with each other. No, completely. In Jainism, there's no sharing of karma with anybody.
Got it. Okay. And then how do you, do you have any tips on mastering karma? How can we really deal with karma in our day-to-day lives?
You see, I think the best mantra I can see is, again, go back to his word, try to live with less.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, you can see, can you see my dress now? I have a kind of I don't know, maroon kind of dress. And for the last 3-4 months, I just made this. I went to India and I got about half a dozen these dress. And for the last 3-4 months, I'm just wearing this dress. So I have nothing. Early in the morning, I just wear the same dress out of those 6 pieces. And can you believe 4 months back, I used to have so many dresses and I need to pick up that dress, this. Should I wear this or should I get that? For the last 4 months, I have nothing to worry about what I need to wear tomorrow. I know I am just going to wear this dress. So very simple example. I have reduced my requirement of dress to one dress.
Mm.
And you can see, just very simple example, just knowing that, oh, I need to cover my body. I just need to cover my body. That's the only purpose of this dress. And so I can really, I had my closet full of dresses. Now I don't need them.
Well, it sounds like it's very similar to the concept of minimalism, which is a movement.
I was going to use that word minimum. That's what I am trying to say. And that's the only way you can save this world. The way we are going right away, I think if you want to have this climate control or global warming, everything, you can control right away if everybody starts going to minimalism.
Well, the thing is interesting, though, is that the reason that we are back in the earlier days, in the 1800s, there was very few people who had a lot because everybody was just really trying to figure out how to survive and all this kind of stuff. And yes, there were people who owned a lot, but the majority of people didn't. But now, because of the Industrial Revolution, the whole economy, the whole engine that runs the world is about creating products and buying products. So then people started to accumulate more and more and more and more. We're now getting to that tipping point environmentally, spiritually, that people are like, now that I can get anything I want, I need to start pulling back a bit and start pulling back, because you start to realize, like you said, if you didn't have to look, if you didn't have to think about what to wear, it didn't have to keep track of 40 or 60 or 80 pieces. I see these closets of these people online or on shows, and they're like giant walk-in closets with more clothes than they'll ever wear in their lifetime. And I'm like, what's the purpose of that? Like, how many more rooms do you need in your house? At a certain point, it's as long as you got your basics covered, a roof over your head, a place to shower, place to eat, prepare your meals, a car that doesn't have to be fancy, or just something that gets you from point A to point B, that's reliable. After you get to a certain point, what else? Why do you need the next fancier car? Why do you need the biggest house you could find? Why do you need 1,000? And then not only a lot of clothes, and then super expensive clothes. Well, that's all that it becomes at that point is all ego. It's all about showing.
Exactly. That's what I was going. So, and I didn't realize this. I just realized this only 4 months ago. So that I'm saying, so if I was able to do that, and I know now, and that's why I want to repeat this mantra again. Try to live with less. I moved from a big house to very simple 1-bedroom apartment. Now I have very few. I have just only 6 pieces of dress. I have very little things in my house. And I can definitely see I am much more happy than I was before.
Oh, I could tell you something. Every time you move from one place to another, you realize how much crap.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's insane, because you just like, so now it's like, I'm always looking like, what can I get rid of?
Exactly.
Too much stuff here.
Yes.
I give away a lot of stuff. I give away, I only keep things that are meaningful for me, or things that are part of my work and what I'm doing. But even things that are meaningful to me, things I can walk away from tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's the thing you have to be able to do. Like if there's things that I love that have been with me for years, but at a certain point, you just have to get, I used to collect comic books when I was a kid, Spider-Man, Batman, all that.
I know.
I had 10 or 12 long boxes. We're talking thousands of comic books.
Exactly.
I carried those books across the country, to California.
Yeah.
And I changed from 4 different houses for 13 years, carrying these boxes and putting them into closets.
Right.
Wait for it. I didn't look at them
Yeah.
more than 5 times in those 13 years. And right before the pandemic, I said, you know what? I think it might be time to let this go. And I sold them and I put the money into something else. And I'm like, these aren't going to be worth billions of dollars later. These are not, I've had them since I was a kid. If they're not going to, at this point, none of these are going to pop into a millionaire situation, unless I'm the last comic collection on the planet. So I let go. And that was one of the most meaningful things I had in my life. But being able to release that and release those old things that aren't, like your perfect example with what you're saying, you had this collection of clothes that served you up to a point, but then you said, no, this isn't serving me anymore. This is the new path. And you're happier, right?
Yes. My entire community now know that this fellow just will be, they see me only in distress. So they don't need me. So nobody really expect anything else from me. They know that this person will be in distress in future. So they know me, and so I'm happy. They are happy. So no problem at all. So
it has been a pleasure talking to you. I want to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests. What is your definition of living a good life?
Again, I think I cannot think of anything better. If you can just, again, cutting down your requirements, live with, I think I cannot find any better word. Living with less is my best way advice would be.
What is your definition of God?
I will say a pure soul is God. God cannot, because we don't believe in create. God cannot do anything with me for me. But yeah, I want to become God because God has perfect happiness, perfect bliss.
Fair enough. You want to become God.
Yeah.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
Just to become God.
To get rid of this karmic debt and
right, exactly.
And get there.
That's my definition of God.
Enlightenment, if you will. Enlightenment, nirvana.
Probably, that's a better word. Yeah.
And where can people find out more about you, your book, The Path to Inner Peace, and the work that you're doing?
They can go to my, I think I don't have any website. That's the main problem, but they can go to this Amazon.com to buy that book, or mantra.com. They can find my book there.
And is there any parting messages you would like to leave with the audience?
No, is again, go to same word. Just to save this universe, try to live with less.
My friend, it has been a pleasure talking to you, and it's been enlightening, to say the least. And I really appreciate what you're doing and doing to help the world. So I appreciate you, and thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for having me.